Hi, I'm Megan.
And I'm Rob. You're watching
Lists of 13.
Here you'll find lists of various topics, all in sets of 13.
If you have tristodectophobia, an irrational fear of the number 13, this video may not be for you. Otherwise, enjoy the list.
Today we're talking about cars, horrible ones. And I say they're horrible because of various different reasons that you will hear in the list. The thing is, in my opinion, as someone who used to sell cars, Fords are probably the best in the industry as far as American companies. However, not everything that Ford made was good.
Today we present to you 13 horrible vehicles with Ford nameplates.
Number 1, the Ford Pinto and Mercury Bobcat. 4 words for why these were horrible. Great balls of fire.
So what caused them to burn?
Well, we went over this in another video, but it was their horribly placed gas tanks that caused them to explode.
Ah, yes, I do remember. Number 2, the Ford Mustang II and Fox Body Mustang with 4-cylinder. Before this, Mustangs had inline 6 or V8 power. Starting in 1974, the base engine was a 2.3-liter inline 4. Power ratings for this base engine were as low as 83 horsepower. That's just embarrassing.
And again, this is one of those cars that mechanically it wasn't a horrible car, but when we were talking about GM, we talked about the Iron Duke Camaro, and when we were talking about Chrysler, we were talking about their 4-cylinder Charger, and this car fits right in line with both of them. Number 3, the first generation Ford Granada and Mercury Monarch. Like the Pinto, this one likes to catch fire also, but it's a little different. The carburetor and fuel intake are placed right next to the wiring harness and many other electrical parts. The inline 6 engines were completely gutless. The 250 inline 6 was rated at 70 horsepower in California emission configuration, which equals 28 horsepower per cubic inch. The 49 state version made a whopping 72 horsepower. Other than being gutless, there were many issues with reliability.
Well, I mean, that doesn't make it very desirable when it has poopy horsepower and might catch on fire or just not work one day.
Yeah, not good at all.
Number 4, Ford E350 Club Wagon 15 passenger. We've covered this on the video of 13 vehicles that have been or should have been recalled, but the van is a death trap. There is a design flaw in this van that places 45% of the weight on the left rear tire. Combine this with the fact that the rear tires are often underinflated, and it's a perfect combination for tread separation and blowout, resulting in the van doing a barrel roll, often resulting in 1 or more deaths.
And the crazy thing is, whenever we go by different cars when we're driving down the road, we call out what kind of car it is, and whenever we see these, we say, hey, there's a death trap van.
Right, but we do give them credit when it's just a cargo van and they're not hauling passengers. Then we say, that's not as bad.
Right. Number 5, the Ford Aerostar. There's a couple of engines available in this van. The 2.8 and 4-liter V6s were decent. The 2.3 inline 4 was okay, but if it wasn't mated to the 5-speed manual transmission, it was really pretty sluggish. However, the 3-liter V6 was not good. They were known for the engines having many oil leaks. They're known to develop around the rear crankshaft, main seal, and engine oil pan gasket. They are also prone to worn or damaged engine bearings. This could cause both bothersome noises and engine damage. All the Aerostars had the potential for ignition switches to be fire hazards due to short circuiting. The front suspension was weak, especially the inner tie rod ends.
Well, you know how I feel about minivans, so this certainly wasn't going to help that.
Right.
Number 6, the Ford Excursion Super Duty with 6-liter Power Stroke. The engine that came before this was a really good engine. There are trucks with this legendary 7.3-liter Power Stroke that are being sold for as much or more as they were when they were new in the late 90s or early 2000s. They're in such high demand because they're so good. The 6-liter, on the other hand, is known for many problems. It's very surprising these two engines were made by the same company, Navistar International. Problems plaguing this engine include head gasket failures, torque to yield head stud failure, fuel injection control module failure, engine oil cooler problems, EGR valve cooler problems, high pressure oil pump failure, and malfunctioning turbos. According to Ford Motor Company, they spent over $1 billion on warranty repairs to these trucks, and that was the beginning of the end for the relationship between Ford and Navistar International.
There was actually a friend of mine who both of us know that was asking about whether or not she should buy a Ford Excursion when she was looking for a different vehicle, and I told her if it has a 7.3, absolutely. But if it has a 6.0, run away from it. Unfortunately, the one she was looking at was a 6.0, which is also why it was so very inexpensive. Number 7, the Ford Tempo and Mercury Topaz. First of all, these cars were hideously ugly, slow, and didn't handle well at all. They were also not reliable. Most of these cars had a 2.3 liter inline 4, but it was not the same as the Mustang or Ranger or Aerostar. This engine is very prone to sludge buildup, overheating, head gasket failures, and cracked heads. They are also known for burning and leaking oil. Lastly, they had problems with speedometers that quit working.
Well, in my opinion, that's really the biggest problem. I mean, I guess if it's ugly and it, has some engine issues, that could be like many other cars, but you need a speedometer that works. Otherwise, you could get speeding tickets or cause a crash because you're speeding too quickly and don't know how fast you're going. Number 8, third generation Ford Focus. This is the model from 2012 to 2016. This car probably has the worst transmission in the history of Ford and possibly the auto industry as a whole. This transmission was designed to help the Focus get better mileage, but the reason they didn't burn as much gas is because they didn't run at all. Ford had faced class action lawsuits and fraud investigations in the United States, Australia, and Canada over the power shift gearbox as being defective and potentially dangerous in the Ford Focus. The lawsuits alleged that the vehicles equipped with the power shift gearbox continue to experience the transmission defect, including but not limited to bucking, kicking, jerking, harsh engagement, and delayed acceleration and lurching. Ford has claimed that the defects were caused by either a faulty throwout bearing or input shaft and rear main seals that leak fluid onto the clutch, causing it to slip even while supposedly fully engaged. Ford has released fixes of the seals and updated the clutch kits, but transmissions that have been repaired are still having their same repeated issues. There were also issues with the transmission control module, such as faulty connector pins, shifter motors failing, and a poorly connected main ground wire due to paint on threads or an incorrect bolt being used during assembly. These transmissions were still installed in Focus until Ford introduced newer models to replace them. There were similar issues with the Ford Fiesta that shared the same transmission.
All of that stuff is completely no bueno and makes me glad I don't own a third generation Focus.
Right.
Number 9, the Ford Aspire. Imagine combining the worst of the Kia Corporation, Mazda Motor Corporation, and Ford Motor Company. Sounds really disturbing, and that's what the Ford Aspire is. These cars are prone to lower engine bearing failure, stretched or broken clutch cables, or cable linkage. Tie rods, tie rod ends, ball joints, and CV joints also fail on a regular basis. They are also known for burning and leaking large amounts of oil.
Isn't the tie rods and the tie rod ends what keeps your wheels on so the car goes round and round?
Not exactly. What it actually is it keeps your car steering correctly, so it's still a really big deal.
Right. I don't want to just steer into the curb when I'm trying to go straight down the street. That could cause an accident.
Right.
Number 10, Ford EXP. This isn't an unusually problematic car, but the idea of the car compared to what it actually is are very far apart. Ford marketed it as a zippy two-door sports car that sounds like lots of fun. The reality is that it was a Ford Escort with seating for two. This means that instead of having rear-wheel drive, like most sports cars, it was a front-wheel drive. There was no real performance unless you opted for the turbo mated to the 5-speed.
And I don't know if you've ever driven a Ford Escort before or not, but it's really not a performance car at all, and it's really pretty doggy unless it's got a 5-speed, period.
I just can't believe that Ford thought they were going to fool people with a two-door Ford Escort and call it a sports car.
Yeah, it didn't work very well at all. It looked a little bit more sporty, but that was about it.
But what are you competing with? You already have the Mustang. Shouldn't you just stop?
That sounds like it would have been a good plan, but apparently they wanted to go after those Japanese sports cars, is my guess, because the Escort is smaller, like a lot of Japanese sports cars are also.
I guess I just can't see myself being like, oh, I could get this tiny front-wheel drive, lame-looking Escort type car, or I could get a Ford Mustang. Wonder what I'd pick.
Number 11, the Lincoln LS. And honestly, this is a car, and there's other cars that are like this too, but this is a car, it looks so pretty and so nice in my opinion that I want it to be a good car.
But it's not.
No, it's not. When this vehicle was first introduced in 1999 as a 2000 model year car, there was a lot of buzz in the automotive market. Unfortunately, it was hope of an awesome rear-wheel drive midsize luxury sedan, but instead, it was really not always that awesome. To be more specific, it was an awesome car when it ran correctly, but that was often not the case. Powered by a choice of a Jaguar V6 or V8 engine, this car was about as reliable as a Jaguar. The V8 option was a little bit less problematic, but it was still not what people would call reliable. They are known for front suspension, steering and ball joint issues, timing chains becoming worn or loose, engines overheating because of cooling failures, head gasket issues, bad ignition coils, issues with heater and air conditioning, transmission shift solenoid issues, and many others.
I mean, it seems like you should either just have a car that's mechanically bad or you have like heating and air problems. Not both. And if you have heat, then maybe I can understand if the air doesn't work. But if the air doesn't work, shouldn't you have heat? Why are there so many problems with this car?
I think part of the reason is the fact that it was built by Jaguar.
Makes sense. Number 12, third generation Mercury Capri. Some people call this car the blunder from down under. This is because it was made in Australia. This car was designed to be a competitor to the Mazda Miata and Toyota MR2. However, instead of it being a front engine rear wheel drive combination, it was a front engine front wheel drive combination. It is powered by two different Mazda motors, which are zippy enough, but after the second generation, this was really a disappointment. The second generation was a rebadged Fox body Mustang. Although more reliable than most on the list, there are still higher than average head gasket and cooling system issues.
And really, this is another one of those cars that was similar to the EXP, where it was just supposed to be a challenge to the Japanese sports cars on the market. But like it said, instead of being front engine rear wheel drive, it was front, and that's just not sporty.
Right.
And number 13, the Ford Super Duty with 6.4 liter Power Stroke diesel. This is the engine that made Ford and Navistar International get a divorce, if you will. As referenced in number 6, Navistar International made the 7.3 Power Stroke, whose owners enjoyed a quite reliable engine. Then they replaced it by the 6 liter, which was much less reliable. When Ford was given the 6.4 liter Power Stroke, I'm sure the executives at Ford were hoping for a much more reliable engine than the 6 liter. Instead, they got the opposite. Some of the big issues with this truck were oil dilution caused by diesel fuel getting into the oil, leaking radiators, fuel economy being much worse than expected, diesel particulate filter clogging, clogged engine oil coolers, cracked exhaust pipes, high pressure fuel pump, wire chafing, fuel system failure, cracked pistons, and cracked blocks.
Leaking, clogging, and cracks, oh my.
Right.
It's just a repeated issue of things that leak, clog, or crack. It sounds like a load of crap.
Well, that's exactly what those trucks were, complete turd boxes. And really not something that you would want to get if you were in the market for a vehicle.
We hope you enjoyed this list of 13 horrible vehicles with Ford nameplates.
If you end up buying any of them and then decide that they're not what you were dreaming they were, the only thing I can say is we told you.
Tell us in the comments if you've owned one of these beauties, or perhaps what you're most surprised about. Thanks again for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up.
And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to get notified when we post new videos.
After subscribing, ring the bell.
After that, tell all your friends.
We hope you enjoy your day and keep being kind to one another.